The litre-class sport bike market in India has two new entrants. One is brand new. The other one's not so new, but it's new to the market and it's considered the best motorcycle you can buy in the class. Today, we're at Chennai and we're going to find out how these two motorcycles square off against each other. But because we have the two top litre-class motorcycles in the world right now, we decided to get two litre-class people to test it. And those would be ANAND DHARMARAJ, founder INDIMOTARD and lead instructor at the TWO track school that INDIMOTARD and OVERDRIVE run. And SIDDHARTH, Sid, TRIVELLORE, who heads VDM and is the man behind California's Superbike School, India. Both are extremely fast, extremely skilled riders who also happen to be part of the CNBC TV18 OVERDRIVE Awards jury. These two mad fast riders and I took to the MMRT in Chennai. Anand went first on the BMW S1000RR.
The BMW S1000 that's here today, it has a big fan following everywhere, and obviously it's got a lot of wins in the circuits internationally, and it is a whole lot different from what you see in terms of other motorcycles because of the kind of electronics that it has on it, which is quite extensive. So for a layman, it's probably not exactly a motorcycle that you can play with the electronics to say, oh, you know what, this is what I want, this is what I don't want, because it really requires somebody who's knowledgeable enough to sort of even tweak those electronics. But having said that, just out of the box, it's a beast. It's got a lot of stuff, it's got a lot of power, it's just, you know, it's so quick on the revs. I just climb so quickly. So you can get yourself in a lot of trouble. But again, as I said, it's, you know, when you ride it on a track like this and an above average rider looks at it, it's a beautiful motorcycle that's put together right out of the box.
And Sid didn't disagree a lot either.
So first impressions on the BMW S1000RR, the bike as such is a very, very thrilling motorcycle to ride. I would definitely caution beginners when they first jump on this motorcycle, because I think it's really geared towards a more professional rider. It's not very friendly in terms of, you know, the power delivery is very, very aggressive. When you go into the corners, it tends to, you know, the back tends to come out. When you come out of the corners, the front wheel tends to lift. So, you know, you tend to have to work very hard on this motorcycle. You know, but having said that, if you can get to terms with how to ride this motorcycle, it can be extremely fast, probably quicker than most other liter bikes in this class.
The BMW RR, as the Germans like to refer to it, definitely comes on a bit strong. It feels bigger as well as more potent than the Suzuki, and it's a thrill ride. It's easy to ride initially, and then it sort of frightens you a little when you start you're ready to play with it. Oh boy, it's like an Alsatian pup who suddenly bares its teeth at you. The Suzuki couldn't be more different in this regard. When you park two motorcycles like this next to each other, some of the differences become obvious. For example, it's very, very clear that the BMW's handlebars are set lower, the Suzuki has a higher set of handlebars, and that should make it easier to ride in the city if you're riding a Suzuki. But what blows me away every single time for motorcycles like this today is how small they've become. Think about it like this. These two are some of the highest performance motorcycles money can buy today on the planet. All motorcycles in this class are at that stratospherically high level, but they are so small. There are motorcycles, Indian motorcycles, sports bikes with 300, 400cc engines that are as large as these or larger. And that always beggars belief. How can a motorcycle packing this much performance be so damn small? But as the saying goes, performance is only as good as your ability to use it, right? This becomes a little bit clearer when you hop on to the Suzuki.
The Suzuki GSX-R1000, personally I thought this was a wonderful motorcycle. I really, really enjoyed riding it. You know, straight out of the box, it doesn't take much getting used to. You take it out on the racetrack and, you know, you feel like you kind of belong on this motorcycle. It's so easy, the handling is very, very confidence inspiring. The power delivery is smooth. It's, you know, it feels more like a 600 than a 1000cc, although the power is strong and obviously much more than a 600. In the handling department, you know, the way it feels, you know, how light it feels, I really think, you know, it's a wonderful motorcycle overall. And this is a motorcycle that you could also use on the street because, you know, it's not as aggressive as the BMW. So, you know, the riding position as well is not as down low as you would expect from you know, a litre class sport bike. So I think, you know, it's a pretty usable motorcycle on the street as well. So overall, I think a great package from Suzuki, and I would definitely put my money down for one.
Now hold on a minute. How did that discussion go from the BMW is good but scary to I want to buy the Suzuki? Anand?
I've ridden it before here at Chennai, and the R version is just beautiful. Fantastic value for money, I think, for the kind of price point that it is. Everything that it has on the BMW, I think, comes on the Gixxer, except maybe a couple of things on the electronic stuff. But it's beautiful out of the box. It's so much more agile through the corners. It feels like it's slower, but it just accelerates so quickly. There's an element of the GSX-R1000 that you just fall in love with. It's got a lot of soul. And that, I think, was very appealing to me with respect to the Suzuki.
It's true. I've maintained from my first ride at the Curry Speedway in Coimbatore that the Suzuki is special. It calms you down and lets you ride as fast as you can while you remain confident and happy, and that makes you faster. The BMW feels more like a specialized weapon. You start to wonder if you have the capability to use it. It makes you feel a little bit lacking even, and that would be hard for a relatively new rider, right?
So unlike the BMW S1000RR, I think, you know, the GSX-R, if you're looking to buy a litre class bike for the first time, and if you're a novice, this bike is definitely the one for you. It's not nearly as aggressive as the BMW, not nearly as intimidating, and you know, you can kind of take your own time with it, and because it's so well planted and the handling is so well sorted out, it kind of makes you feel like you're a better rider than you actually are. So if you're a novice looking at buying a litre class bike, or if you're moving up from a smaller displacement bike to a litre class bike, this would definitely be a good place to start.
Okay, but what about the pro-level skilled and fast riders?
I think for pros, again, I take the BM and the Gixxer. I would say the pros would probably find the BM a lot more to their liking, just because it's just so much more brutal, so much more horsepower that just wants to kick in, and so quickly. And I'm sure that's probably what, as a pro, you're sort of saying, I don't want to wait exiting the corner, whereas the Gixxer just feels a tad slower through the corners, I mean, coming out of the corners. That's my only thing that I would say as a you know, if a pro is looking at it. A little bit of tuning on the suspension, as I would expect on any motorcycle, which you take a stock setting and you say, okay, I'm going to go faster. Probably the Gixxer is a little more easier to deal with and play with, as opposed to the BM.
As you can see, the decision between the two motorcycles isn't one of price. If the new Yamaha YZF-R1 and the new Honda Fireblade were here, I suspect that this story would hardly be different. They're not here because those test bikes are yet to arrive. The point is that this is such a frighteningly high level of performance that for riders of average to very high skill, it really doesn't matter which specification they buy into. It boils down to their ability to use it. Which is why Anand and Sid, both advanced riders, and I, much slower than them, all gravitated towards the Suzuki. It just felt easier to ride. The BMW was always impressively fast, but you always found yourself in awe of it rather than in sync with it. Maybe that's why on our short stint the Suzuki lapped 4 seconds faster than the BMW at Chennai. And as Anand and Sid both pointed out, the gap should have been much smaller, maybe even in favor of the BMW, but the BMW needs more time for you to get used to so that you can extract that kind of performance.
As you start going faster is when the negatives kick in, and probably for somebody who's just buying this brand new, you need to get used to the kind of power delivery it has. It's definitely not twitchy. It's not twitchy at the low end, but at the high end, it starts getting, you know, suspension starts playing a factor in this. Although it's got an adaptive electronic suspension on it, and the only negative that I found was that it starts to drift wide. When you get on the gas, the rear starts to sort of start to spin. And maybe it's something that needs to be tuned as you start going faster, and that tuning requires quite a bit of knowledge before you can say, okay, this is what I want to change, because so much of it is being handled already by the electronics on the motorcycle. So that's probably what I would say is not necessarily a negative, but something that is not necessarily a great thing to have, because it's not somebody that anybody can just take it and say, okay, I know what to do with it.
So perhaps Chennai is just a little too small for bikes this powerful to really come out and play. But even at a track like this, it's immediately obvious that the difference between the litre class motorcycles today is very, very small. And that said, they are some of the best litre class motorcycles we have ever seen, because for motorcycles this powerful to be this compact and this easy to ride is just unprecedented. What it boils down to is something that I have always said, that motorcycles are about how they make you feel, not about the spec sheet or price. And that's how this verdict goes as well. You've heard Anand's version of the story, you've heard Sid's version of the verdict, but my feeling is that if I had to choose between these two bikes, I'm in awe of the BMW. It is so good and so fast, but I keep feeling like the electronics work harder than I do. And therefore, I would pick the Suzuki, because what it reminds me of is a really powerful 600cc motorcycle, something I can relate to more easily, something that gives me more confidence, something I can take and push as fast as I can go and learn 1,000 things from it. And that brings us to the verdict. To me, this is the motorcycle to buy. But to you, the answer is in a BMW or a Suzuki showroom, where you should get a test ride before you decide.